Excused.
Scott. Simpson. Smallwood. Sonnenberg. Story.
Here.
Winter. Woodward. Senzinger. Who's missing? Coleman. Cook here yet? No, Cook's not going to be till noon. Donovan. Should I go to the president? Mr. President.
Here. The morning roll call is 33 present, 0 absent, 2 excused. We have a quorum. Would the good senator from Centennial please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Members, please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal. Senator Liston.
I have nothing exciting to say today, Mr. President, except I move that the reading of the Journal of Friday, June 4th be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary. I'll have more exciting things tomorrow.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed no. The ayes having the motion is adopted. Senate Services.
June 7th, correctly engrossed Senate Bill 293, correctly re-engrossed Senate Bill 260, correctly revised House Bills 1005, 1014, 1101, 1111, 1261, 1271, 1255, 1286, correctly re-revised House Bills 1030, 1010, 1134, 1166, 1171, 1196, 1198, 1219, 1216, 1230, 1254, 1260, 1263, 1264, 1275, 1276, 1280, 1281, 1289, 1294, 1302, 1313, 1314, 1316, 1318, correctly enrolled Senate Bills 1672, 116, 129, 131, 173, 174, 238, 245, 249, 252, 255, 256, 268, 278, 283, and 286.
Committee reports.
June 4th, Committee on Finance. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following House Bill 1325 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. June 4th, Committee on Finance. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following House Bill 1326 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. June 4th, Committee on Finance. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following House Bill 1313 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations.
Introduction of resolutions.
SJR 26 by Senators Fenberg and Representative Escar concerning the appointment of a joint committee to notify the governor that the first regular session of the 73rd General Assembly is about to adjourn sine die.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Should we just do it now? Thank you, Mr. President. I move. What is this?
Senate Joint Resolution 026.
I move Senate Joint Resolution 26 lay over one day under the rules.
You have heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Senate Joint Resolution 026 will lay over one day until 6/8/21 and retain its place on the calendar. Will the clerk please read the title to HJR 1011?
HJR 1011 by Representative Holtorf and Senator Simpson concerning the designation of a portion of United States Highway 160 as a Deputy Travis Russell and Deputy Sergeant Matthew Troy Moreno Memorial Highway.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move HJR 1011 lay over until later today.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted, and HJR 1011 will lay over until later today. Committee reports.
January 4th, Committee on State, Veteran, and Military Affairs. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1329 be amended as follows. So amended, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with a favorable recommendation. June 4th. Committee on State, Veterans, and Military Affairs. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1328 be referred to the Committee on the whole favorable recommendation placed in the consent calendar. June 4th, Committee on State, Veterans, and Military Affairs. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1309 be referred to the Committee on the whole favorable recommendation.
Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Will the clerk please read all the bills listed on the third reading of bills, consent calendar?
House Bill 1101 by Representative Ransom and Senators Buckner concerning preserving familial connections in actions initiated pursuant to the Children's Code and in connection therewith making appropriation. House Bill 1111 by Representative McKean and Senator Bridges and Gonzalez concerning the possession of certain personal information by governmental entities. House Bill 1261 by Senators Catlin and Cutter and Senators Quorum and Janal concerning the extension of the sales and use tax exemption for beetle kill wood products.
1209, 1251.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar, which includes House Bill 1101, House Bill 1111, and House Bill 1261.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar? Seeing none, are there any no votes on any of the bills? With 30...
I personally really like these seats, but
Will the clerk please add Senator Rodriguez to the roll call?
I already used my one reconsideration, so I can't miss my third reading.
With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1101 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Janal, Lee, Gonzalez, Priola, Smallwood. Please add the President. And Senator Pedersen. With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1111 is passed. Co-sponsors. With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1261 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Simpson, Mr. Minority Leader, Moreno, Lundin, Priola, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Heisey, Gardner, Liston, Scott, Kirkmeyer, Danielson, Rodriguez, Woodward, Patterson, Winter, Lee. Please add the President. Third reading of bill's final passage. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1233? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, before we actually get to those bills, we are going to reconsider 2 bills that we took action on Friday. Mr. President, having voted on the prevailing side, I move for the reconsideration of House Bill 1209, as amended.
The motion is for the immediate reconsideration of House Bill 1009. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed no. The ayes have it and reconsideration is granted. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1209?
Whose bill is that?
House Bill 1209 by Representative Gonzalez, Gutierrez, and Doherty, and Senator Lee, concerning offenders who committed an offense when under 21 years of age and in connection with making appropriation.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for 1209 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote by everyone.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is passage of House Bill 1209, third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Gardner, Lundin, Sonnenberg, Quorum, Heisey, Simpson, Kirkmeyer, Liston, Rankin, Janal, Fields, Scott, Woodward, Priola, Smallwood. With
Sir Woodward.
With 18 ayes, 16 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1209 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Buckner, Gonzalez, Moreno. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side, I move for the reconsideration of House Bill 1251.
The motion is for the immediate reconsideration of House Bill 1251. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes having the motion is adopted and reconsideration is granted. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1251?
No, you don't.
What are we talking? You're talking about ketamine, 1250.
Just reconsideration. Just move to pass it.
Senator Fields.
Thank you.
Senator Fields. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1251?
House Bill 1251 by Representative Caraveo, Inheritance, Senators Field and Gonzalez, concerning the appropriate use of ketamine upon a person in a pre-hospital setting.
Members, we're on third reading. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that for the repassage of this House Bill 1251.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of House Bill 1251 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Simpson, Liston, Scott, Kirkmeyer, Smallwood, Lundeen, Gardner, Priola, Sonnenberg, Heisey, Coram, Woodward. With 21 ayes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1251 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we proceed out of order to take up Senate Bill 293.
The motion is that the Senate proceed out of order to take up Senate Bill 293. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we will proceed out of order to take up Senate Bill 293. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill 293?
Senate Bill 293 by Senators Hansen and Rankin and Representative Escar, concerning property taxation and in connection therewith establishing subclasses of residential and non-residential property for the 2022 and 2023 property tax years, temporarily reducing the assessment rate for property classified as agricultural property or renewable energy production property from 29% to 26 4/10%, for property classified as multifamily residential rural property from 7 15/100% to 6 8/10%, contingent on a related initiative not being approved by the voters, and for other residential property from 7 15/100% to 6 91 95/100%, restructuring the assessment rate laws and expanding the property tax deferral program to allow taxpayers to defer increases in property taxes in limited circumstances.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 293 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to ask the body for permission to offer a third reading amendment.
The question before the body is to allow permission to the good Senator to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and permission is granted. Will the good senator from Denver please proceed? There's an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L021?
Amendment L021.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I move L021.
To the amendment, Senator.
Thank you. Members, a very small cleanup from the work, the great work we did on seconds together. L021 essentially implements the decision to have the state treasurer study and then implement the deferral mechanism that we all voted on and supported with a previous amendment on seconds. And so this would allocate a small amount of money to do that study and allow the state treasurer to begin that work. And I urge an aye vote on L21.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L021. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Amendment L021 is adopted. To the bill.
We're going to need just a minute to get off. I just get my coffee. Oh. All right.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a chance to do a little bit of double checking over the weekend, and as a result, found a few small technical details that are going to need some attention. We've just about got those ready for your consideration, but we'll need to give those a moment to be printed out and offered. So with that, I would ask for a senatorial 5.
The Senate will stand in senatorial 5. There's an amendment at the desk. Would the good senator from Denver please, Senator Hansen?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I believe I need to ask for permission again to offer a third reading amendment, and I appreciate the body's indulgence on a couple of technical amendments that we need to offer before you.
Would the good senator from Denver please explain the need for a third reading amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We've got an L19 and an L20. They are both not changing anything functional in the bill at all, simply cleanup language to make sure the definitions are clear, to make sure they can be implemented smoothly by the assessors around the state, and so would like to offer both of those amendments for your consideration.
The question before the body is to allow the good senator from Denver permission to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Permission is granted. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L019?
L019.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, members, just briefly, I'll summarize what's happening in L019. As I said, these are really adjustments in the language to make sure it's clear for implementation. So, for instance, we need to more accurately describe the lodging properties that may continue to be mixed-use lodging, which of course happens on many occasions in the state of Colorado. We need to tighten the language around the temporary reductions for ag and renewable energy properties. So it says, after assessment, we insert of this property. So those are the kind of things we're talking about here. The third thing that we do in L19 is to make sure we have a clear definition of multifamily residential, so that includes duplexes, triplexes, or multi-structure of 4 or more units, which of course is the intent of the bill. We have need to do consistent use of residential rare property. We need to add a hyphen to cash flow so that it's cash hyphen flow. That is what we're trying to get done with L19. Nothing substantive from our discussion on Friday. And urge your support of L19.
Is there further discussion? Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just to ensure that I am reading this correctly, does this change in any way the property tax designation of those multifamily residential real property units, or does it maintain it the same? If you can just explain the interplay between that.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to the good senator from Denver. This definition that you're seeing in L19, we believe is correctly fills out what may have been thought of as not complete enough in the bill as it's currently written. So it doesn't change anything from the intent of the bill, meaning multifamily is going to be treated in the bill as we discussed on Friday, which is that there will be an immediate reduction to 6.8 for the RAR for multifamily. We are just making sure that multifamily here includes duplexes, triplexes, quads, et cetera. So that's what we're proposing with L19, is to clarify that definition, no change in the intent of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L019. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Amendment L019 is adopted. To the bill. Senator Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to ask for one more third reading amendment to clarify the bill.
Would the good senator from Carbondale please explain the need for an amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. These are conforming amendments. Doesn't change the bill in any substantial way. It just ensures that it conforms to CRS other bills in progress. So it clarifies a cross-reference to appropriate non-residential assessment rates without changing the content of the bill. It clarifies the notification of valuation that would have to be done by the assessors. It's a conforming amendment related to bed and breakfast and a taxpayer's remedies to correct errors. So I ask for your yes vote on conforming amendments.
Is there further discussion?
some permission.
The motion first is, before the body, is to allow permission to the Good Senator from Carbondale to offer a third reading amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my intention to vote yes.
Senator Lundin, can we first proceed on giving him permission first?
I want to speak to that.
Members, if there's no objection to allowing discussion on permission first, I will recognize Senator Lundin. Senator Lundin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this, even though it's unusual to speak to the motion for permission to make a third reading amendment to a bill. I sat quietly for the first amendment. I got out of my chair for the second amendment, but kept my mouth closed. As we get to this third amendment, I could not help myself but come to the well and say, the people who walked through a title board process do not have the opportunity of collegiality as we are having here today to make adjustments, amendments, in what is considered to be a fairly precarious situation when we start amending bills on third reading, not once, not twice, but 3 times. The people who rose up to put an initiative on the ballot don't have that level of freedom and collegiality. They're locked into the language that this bill will disrupt. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that. I think it's important that we understand we are coming behind the curve with this. We are giving ourselves the ability to disrupt with collegiality in a way that the people who've gone through the title board process do not now have. That's an important part of the underlying context of what's going on with this bill, and that's why I rise to say I will vote yes, because that's part of our tradition here, to work together, but to acknowledge the fact that this bill is, at the end of the day, incredibly disruptive to a process that the people don't have the flexibility to work with, that we are taking by virtue of these actions in this body today. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The question before the body is to allow permission to the Good Senator from Carbondale request to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed no. The ayes having permission is granted. There is an amendment at the desk.
Here, I got it.
Oh, yep, sorry.
Will the clerk please read amendment L020?
Amendment L020 to Senate Bill 293 by Senator Hansen.
Senator Rankin.
Thank you. I briefly explained the amendment before. It does not change any substance in the bill. We had a good debate and offered amendments in second reading, so I urge a yes vote on this conforming amendment.
Is there any discussion regarding amendment L020? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of this amendment. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 1 excused, amendment L020 is adopted. To the bill. Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and colleagues. Again, very appreciative of the robust discussion we had on Senate Bill 293 on seconds. Appreciate your indulgence this morning, doing some technical cleanups and helping to make sure we can implement this bill smoothly. I want to just close with, this is to me, a great example of us doing our jobs. We're doing our jobs to react and understand, in our understanding of the economic data, of the market conditions in which our constituents face, in which we face as a state. And I believe Senate Bill 293 is responsive. It's the correct response to a very dynamic situation. 293, to me, fulfills the promise that we collectively made last year, and when we think about the post-Gallagher repeal situation, we are offering immediate and certain property tax relief to the vast majority of all taxpayers in the state of Colorado. 293 accomplishes this important goal and does it in a good understanding of the economic context in which we are facing. So I thank this body for this important discussion. this important discussion late in the session as we are taking account of this dynamic situation, and I urge your support of 293.
Is there further discussion? Senator Rankin.
Thank you for your tolerance on this late and difficult bill. I believe that we have several commitments as a legislature. One of them is to honor the taxpayers' vote to repeal the Gallagher Amendment. This is an attempt to manage that situation over the circumstances that we see in front of us. But we also have an obligation to over 2,000 special districts and 178 school districts and 64 counties, all of whom are impacted differently by statewide tax cuts. The Gallagher Amendment should never have had the word statewide in it. That set the course for us doing very disruptive things. This is not one state in terms of equal economic impact and equal budgeting issues. It is not. Douglas County, Jefferson County, Weld County, they're very different from all of our rural counties. Our special districts are very different from each other. They do not need to be controlled by statewide rate setting. It just isn't right. So what we're attempting to do here is manage that situation, but at the same time, realize that in some of our counties, in our obligation left over from Tabor, there is a dramatic increase in taxes. So a 2-year temporary decrease in some of those taxes is appropriate. But we can't see the future. We need to know what's happening. We do not need to assume that we know what will happen in 2 years. That's what this is all about. It's the legislature taking responsibility. The dictatorship of the majority of this state does not work for the whole state. I urge a yes vote.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's fascinating to me that this so important bill that comes after ramifications of last year gets introduced last week. When people don't have the ability to analyze and evaluate and then come in and testify. And I'm worried about unintended consequences, such as 3 additional third reading amendments because we didn't catch things on second reading. How much more is there that we are not aware of, that we do not know how this bill will affect us? Members, I worry about a process in which allows citizens to petition their government, and how this affects those petitions when we don't do what the people expect us to do. I think we're making a mistake. I don't know because it's hard for me to gather all the information on this bill in such short time. If it's that important, bring it back next year where we can have discussion. Or for heaven's sakes, introduce it this year at the beginning of the session. You talked about how this came from last year, a year ago. But we introduced it just last week, in June. Members, I ask us to be prudent as a body and not allow this to move forward. To bring a bill next year that can have discussion, that can have debate, that we can actually understand from the special districts, from the local counties, from those school districts, how this actually affects them. Members, I'm asking you to vote no this year. And let's have this discussion in a more timely manner, as this is a huge huge issue that needs to be discussed. I am asking for your no vote.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I speak to Senate Bill 293 directly, I'd like to provide a few contextual comments. For those of us who are millennials, we've had to navigate seemingly endless crisis. First 9/11, then the Great Recession, and now COVID-19. When we were kids, we were told that if we went to college and got a good education, that was how we'd be able to achieve the American dream. However, we now find ourselves saddled with more student debt than Gen Xers and Boomers had when they were 40. We were told that having that college education would lead to well-paying jobs. But instead, thanks to crisis after crisis destabilizing our economy, we have lower net worth than our parents did when they were our age. Those gaps are deeper for people of color. And by the way, millennials are far more diverse than Gen Xers and Boomers. And as a consequence, millennials find it far more difficult to afford a mortgage in the first place. Y'all have heard me speak on many bills pertaining to housing accessibility and affordability about how deep the need is to address the rising cost of living. Earlier this session, I asked the members of this chamber to raise your hands if you were a renter. Not a single one of us raised our hands. We're all property owners in this chamber, and some of us own more property than others. But more and more of our constituents are not property owners. They are renters. And it's not just millennials. More and more renters in this state are older as housing prices skyrocket and home ownership becomes that much more difficult to access. And so, colleagues, it is that context that provides the lens through which I consider Senate Bill 293, and for that matter, Initiative 27. Senate Bill 293's short title is Concerning Property Taxation, which means that one needs to own land. And property ownership is, quite frankly, becoming more and more of a pipe dream for more and more Coloradans. And that brings me to my first critique of this bill. The property owners who own duplexes, triplexes, now given this amendment, 4-unit residential buildings, as well as multifamily residential units, those property owners get a bigger tax break in Senate Bill 293 than single-family homeowners do. My understanding is that the proponents of Senate Bill 293 hope that property tax relief will result in relief for tenants. And while I respect that intention, I doubt that it will actually result in meaningful change for renters. But what it will result in is an even deeper gap between the haves and have-nots, between property owners and renters. Now, SB 293 is the bipartisan response to Initiative 27. If Senate Bill 293 is attempting to address our property tax policies with a scalpel, Initiative 27 is a hatchet job. We do not have enough time in our legislative session for me to tell y'all about how devastating Initiative 27 and its billion-dollar cuts year after year would be for rural communities, for schools, for wildfire mitigation, and for our state. But that is the intent of the proponents, the way that I read the bill. The way that I read the bill, the proponents who are moving forward Initiative 27, their intent is to drown government in a bathtub. Apparently, 60% of the school districts in our state operating on 4-day weeks isn't concerning enough. Perhaps we'll wake up when our school districts sound the alarm on needing to shift to 3-day weeks. That's where I draw the line. I ran an amendment on second reading that sought to provide more information to voters in the event that Senate Bill 293 passes and Initiative 27 moves forward. Speaking of scalpels, and even that amendment was severed. Apparently, the idea of speaking directly to voters and providing additional information is unpopular because it would be seen as being too political. I understand that there will be bipartisan support as well as bipartisan opposition to Senate Bill 293. And for me, in a moment when our economic recovery is still very much in flux, tax breaks for multifamily residential owners is not the way forward, especially when they're larger than for property tax owners of single-family homes. We have seen the ways in which this latest crisis laid bare so many systemic inequities. Let us not further entrench those inequities today. I ask that y'all not take the easy road. I ask that you commit to organizing, to having those conversations with your constituents on the dangers of Initiative 27. I ask that you not settle for a temporary fix to a disturbing proposition, but rather opt for the hard work of meaningfully engaging the Colorado voters on this discussion. I ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 293.
Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. President. We probably all look at every bill through the lens of the district that we represent, and that's a good thing. We were sent down here by those people to represent them. But as I do that on 293, reminds me why I supported putting the repeal of Gallagher on the ballot, because Gallagher was killing my small special districts in rural Colorado that had no commercial base. They were concerned, the special districts were concerned with that. They said, Gallagher's a problem, but that bill, when we repeal it, that puts the legislature in charge of the mill levies. I said, not to worry, not to worry. We're not going to be tampering with your mill levies. You'll have some certainty, you'll know what you can count on. Obviously, I was wrong. Obviously, I was wrong. And what I see is the arrogance of the legislature. We are now back to saying Gallagher wasn't right statewide. However, we're going to be right statewide because we're going to set the mill levies statewide. We've heard from the EMS districts more than any other. Their revenue loss under 293, they predict to be between 4% and 6% this next year. Those are some of our most vulnerable districts. They're running on a shoestring as it is. Their services are often not paid for. They provide many runs and trips to the hospital and even just responding to calls where they just provide some sort of first aid and then they don't transport anyone. The vast number of those are not reimbursed by insurance companies or private pay. They're the folks we expect to be there every single time when we call 911. We expect them to be there in a timely manner. And they are the ones that we're hurting the most right now. And if you live in a rural area and you know that it's not a 7-minute response time. You know it could easily be a 20-minute response time. And if they don't have people staffed and ready to go, it just may not matter if you call 911 for a medical call or not. I would ask for a no vote. I would ask that we leave the mill levies alone for the sake of those rural folks that are depending on those EMS services out there who are already operating on a shoestring budget and they need more staff, not less. They need more vehicles, not fewer. Thank you.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to get up and speak because I felt like I had spoken on seconds, but after comments today, I thought maybe I should get up and clear some things up again, because I heard that we are simply doing our jobs. I just cannot agree with that. I would agree with the good senator from Denver who said that this is a response to Initiative 27. I think you're exactly right. That's the part that bothers me the most. But just so we're clear, last year with the repeal of Gallagher, it kept the assessment ratios up for residential, which, if your assessed value either stayed the same or went up, your property taxes went up. The reason it was necessary for that to occur last year, I believe, and the reason y'all put it on the ballot, was because of the issue with the school districts and backfilling. Period. That's it. It was because if assessed values go down, the assessment ratio for residential goes down, the property tax revenues coming in for any special district, city, or county may decrease, with the exception as if commercial, business, non-residential values went up. The reality is property taxes go up. So to me, this bill is, it's really the whole issue about mill levies, assessment ratios. That's not really the issue here. We've had the discussion about Gallagher wreaking havoc. No, one Gallagher. It was Tabor. As I explained last week, when Gallagher was passed, it set what the assessment ratios were. And in the late 80s, when the residential assessment ratios were at like 26, 27%, it started driving them down. But what local governments, fire districts, library districts, cities, counties, any special district, they had the ability pre-Tabor that when the residential assessment ratio went down, started impacting the dollar amount coming in for property taxes, that they could just raise the mill levy. And so they could balance it out. So the whole goal behind Gallagher was to protect the residential property owner, because there was the 45-55 split in there that said statewide only 45% of residential property taxes, they could only represent 45% of the total aggregate taxes coming in. That is what saved residential property taxes from not going through the roof. And it put more of the property tax burden on non-residential, on commercial, on business, on lodging, on agriculture. So it wasn't Gallagher that wreaked havoc, it was Tabor that wreaked havoc. Because what Tabor said was, can't just go raise your mill levy anymore. All you special districts, all you local districts, all you counties, municipalities, you can't just go in and equalize out your property tax revenue to the level of service that you wish to provide in your area. You now have to take it to a vote. It took about 1 year for everyone, every special district, every county, municipality to figure out that you just simply have to go to a vote. You can go to a vote to increase your mill levy, or you can do what's called temporary mill levy reductions. So essentially you start floating your mill levy. So your mill levy would never drop down below what it was in 1992. That's what could occur. What can occur also, and what special districts and then municipalities and even some counties have figured out, is that you could also de-Gallagherize, going back to floating your mill levies again, keeping your residential rate at a certain assessment ratio, keeping those property taxes at where you had them the previous year if you need it. But you had to go get permission from your voters. That is still possible. That did not go away with the repeal of Gallagher. You still have the opportunity as a county, a municipality, a special district, any local district to go to your voter. You are accountable to your voters, and your voters decide the level of service that they are willing to have in basis of the amount of property tax that they are willing to pay. That is not our job. That is the job of the local elected officials. They're supposed to be making sure that the property taxes that they collect are commensurate with the level of service that their property owners, that their taxpayers, that their voters are willing to pay for. That's not our job. What this bill does, at best, it infringes upon the right, those constitutional rights of the people to initiate an issue onto the ballot. That's what this bill does. It starts to do that. And at its worst, in its response to Initiative 27, it's working to manipulate the outcome of an election. That's why we should be opposed to this bill. That is what this bill does. That is not our job. We are under no obligation in any of those special districts, counties, or municipalities to ensure that they go to their voters and ask to increase property taxes. Not our job. Our job is to ensure that we have actions that don't defeat the people's ability to initiate to the ballot. What we're doing with this bill, Senate Bill 293, is an action by the legislature, by government, that will lose people's trust, not gain it. So with that, I ask for a no vote.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's fascinating here in our General Assembly to see the diversity of opinion and position. And this bill is, once again, a reminder of that. We've heard from members of the majority, Democrats, who support 293, and we've heard from at least one, my friend from Denver, who opposes 293. We have heard from folks in the minority, Republicans, who support 293, and many, including me, who oppose 293. I've mentioned before that there are 7 members of the Douglas County Board of Education, and I've mentioned before I didn't vote for any of them. A few years ago, the people of Douglas County finally, after many attempts, listened to those who I disagree with, and they approved a bond and mill override for our school district. I voted no on the bond and mill override, and I voted against the 7 people who currently serve in the school board, but my opposition to 293 is in support of them and their bond and mill override. I voted no on the bond and mill override, but the majority of people who I represent voted yes. And, much to my disappointment, the majority of those who vote in odd-year elections voted to elect the 7 members of the Douglas County Board of Education, again, none of whom I have voted for. And now my job as the senator for Senate District 30, which is half of Douglas County, is to support those 7 people and the bond and mill override they supported and got passed. So why do I think that's important in opposing Senate Bill 293? If you look at the fiscal note, this would be the June 3rd edition. I believe it's the revised fiscal note. And you turn to page 4. Under the category school districts, boy, there's some language in here that would prove me wrong, and it sounds just great for the Douglas County Board of Education and those who supported their bond and mill override. It starts off, to the extent that school districts lose revenue collected through the assessment of total program mills, their revenue loss will be offset by increased state aid through the School Finance Act, as discussed in the state expenditures section of this fiscal note. So far, so good. If 293 results in a reduction, we're going to backfill. About 26.4% of the property tax revenue impact is expected to occur in school finance total program mills with an offsetting state aid requirement. Boy, that sounds great, doesn't it? No risk there. And then there's that word if. If is a two-letter word that's a whole lot easier to understand and offer up than notwithstanding. So far, so good. Unless, what's the unless? Well, these are encouraging words because everybody can trust the state legislature, right? We never renege. We never say, notwithstanding, we can't do that, we're going to go ahead and do that. If the General Assembly chooses to address the decreased local share by increasing the budget stabilization factor instead, then lost funding for school districts will not be offset. So, who has their crystal ball? Who has their magic mirror on the wall? What's going to happen a year from now? What's going to happen 2 years from now? Anybody know? Now, the budget stabilization factor, otherwise known as the BS factor, used to be called the negative factor. But some people thought that sounded pessimistic. Negative is not an optimistic word, so let's not call it the negative factor anymore. Let's come up with something that's more optimistic. Let's call it the BS factor. Good grief. Now, we legislators, we might be able to say that with a straight face, but I think a lot of our constituents might say BS, and they're not referring to budget stabilization. What happens next year or the year after if revenues are down? What happens if the next Great Recession occurs and those of you who serve here have to raise the negative factor, the BS factor? I hope those of you who continue on, next year will be my last. I'm term limited. So maybe I won't be here when this happens, but it could happen next year. I've been blessed to serve in the majority, 6 of the 11 years I've been here and 5 in the minority, and if I'm here next year, it'll be 6 and 6. I have advocated for reducing, or let's just pay off the negative factor, now known as the budget stabilization factor. When I've been in the majority, I've said we should pay that off. And when I've been in the minority, well, that would be the opposite. So, of course, I said exactly the same thing. We need to pay it off. But I'm looking at this fiscal note, and it's saying, oh, wait a minute. If for any reason revenues are down and the General Assembly needs to increase the BS factor, the negative factor, then lost funding for school districts will not be offset. So, where are Case and Casby, the Colorado Association of School Executives and the Colorado Association of School Boards? Some in this chamber probably listen more attentively to them when they speak than others. But for those watching, listening online, I'm looking out the glass door of the Senate into the lobby and, I don't see the two organizations that represent school executives and school districts here, school boards. Not that I work with them often, but where's CEA? Oh, there's one. Yeah. Where's the adamant opposition or concern on Senate Bill 293? Maybe I've seen it, or maybe it's been sent in, but I don't remember seeing that. So here I am representing a district, a school district that covers an entire county. I voted no on the bond and mill, didn't vote for any of the people who serve on the school board. But I'm in this odd position of having to defend what the majority of people at Douglas County School District, the third largest district in the state, did under our state constitution with that little thing called local control. And of course, we've had many, many, many bills, and you've heard from me many times about local control in Colorado. People move here to this state from other states where it isn't local control. It has more top-down, centralized control, including budgeting. And we've had lots of discussions about how schools are funded in the state. And people say, we are among the lowest funding. Well, only if you count part of the apple and not the whole apple, because here in Colorado, because of local control, you can't just look at what comes out of this building, because for some districts, that's a third of their total funding. And other districts, it might be half of their total funding. And for my district, up until the bond and mill override passed, it was very close to 100% of the funding. But since 1876, the school districts, there's currently 178 of those, get to go out under local control, and the people who live and vote within those school districts get to decide whether or not they're going to add to the part of the total funding that we send them from the state with local bond and mill override funding. And even though I voted no on that last question in Douglas County, it passed. So the majority of people who I represent have said, yes, they want to pay more at the local level to supplement the portion that we send from the state level. And Senate Bill 293, if everything stays fine and the economy stays on track and state revenues are okay, Senate Bill 293 will make them whole.
Would the good senator from Douglas County like to be extended to your next 10 minutes?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
So the risk to my school district, the one that I represent, and all the other 177 is, if everything stays the same, there isn't any risk. They'll get dollar for dollar what their voters have approved. But as the school district section on page 4 indicates, and it doesn't go into these such negative BS kind of words, budget stabilization factor related words, if things don't stay the same, they lose money. So the important thing for us to understand, whether you represent one school district like I do, or my friend from Sterling, I think he said 20 to 25% of all the school districts in Colorado are in Senate District 1. 20%, is that it? 25% of all those 178 school districts are in one Senate district, Senate District 1. One of the districts is in Senate District 30, Douglas County. And that's only half of it. The other one is in Senate District 4 from my good friend who also doesn't live in Parker. But the part I don't understand is, why are those school boards, maybe they are, maybe I've missed it, why are those school boards and those school executives not saying, hold on, we want this amended, we want to be assured that the backfill will happen no matter what. We don't want our sure, 100% sure local dollars put at risk of becoming an increasing IOU, the budget stabilization factor, the negative factor. So what's the risk of that? I don't know. I started out by asking, who has your crystal ball, your magic mirror? What's going to happen next year or the year after? This isn't a top-down centralized control state, and it hasn't been since 1876. And as the senator for a district that has used local control to give its own funding, I just want everybody to understand it's not a sure thing. Why would you put at risk Douglas County Board of Education? Why would you want to put your 100% certain dollar, why would you put that at risk to get dollar for dollar, the same amount of money, maybe? Why would you want that risk? As the senator for Senate District 30, I'm not willing to trade certainty for risk for exactly the same return and ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 293.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. We talked at length on this bill on seconds. I rise in opposition to 293. If you all recall back pre-Gallagher, the impetus, the motivation, the drive behind Gallagher is people were being taxed out of their homes. And it was brought before the General Assembly in an effort to resolve that matter. It was repealed in the last session. Had it not been, the people that were concerned about being taxed out of their homes would have a homeowner rate of 5.8% approximately this coming year. Because it was repealed, that rate moves to 7.15. The bill, 293, echoes an initiative that has been approved by the title board. It's yet to be determined whether or not enough of the people will sign on to get it on the ballot, but it's pretty clear indication, pretty sure thing that the people will rise up to manage their relationship with taxes so they are not taxed out of their homes. This bill creates a temporary set of tax reliefs, but it provides them in a way that are uneven, and it doesn't make permanent the tax savings for the people who might be taxed out of their homes. Now, I stood in this well and said, I'm kind of a Madisonian Republican. I believe that the people elect and send people to the legislature to convene and make the laws on their best behalf. But here in Colorado, we have a strong tradition of the people raising their hand and signing their name on a petition that says, I want to put an initiative on the ballot because I think I can make laws as well as those folks who work under the Gold Dome. Initiative 27, so-called, as it's moving through the process, is an effort to do exactly that. Now, my primary opposition, aside from the fact that the tax increases or tax decreases offered under 293 are temporary, my primary objection is the fact that 293 seems to be taking a couple of pages, important pages, specific rate reductions, right out of the title as drawn by the people and approved by the title board. The 7.15 rate for homeowners today is cut by 293 to 2.86. No, to 6.5, exactly as I-27 would have done. Is that a coincidence? The conflation, the fact that 293 echoes and mirrors the initiative that's been approved by the title board? Is that a coincidence or is it intentional? I'll leave that for you to decide, but it is clear that it creates confusion. Confusion doesn't help when you're trying to get to a binary decision. Do I vote for the initiative? Do I vote against the initiative? It's in this point that 293 creates confusion that I find myself in league with Colorado Fiscal Institute. I argue with them just about every time they appear before the Finance Committee from a difference of perspective. I find unity with them today on this cause. The same is true with the Bell Policy Institute. I argue with them just about every time they appear before the Finance Committee based on principle. But I find unity with them in this cause. The confusion created by 293 is not beneficial to the people and the title that they have already pulled in an effort to make sure that they are not taxed out of their homes. I urge your opposition to Senate Bill 293. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Bill 293 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Gonzalez, Lundin, Smallwood, Woodward, Kirkmeyer, Sonnenberg, Scott, Liston, Gardner. Heisey. With 23 aye votes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 293 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Bridges, the Majority Leader. Priola. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1233?
House Bill 1233 by Representative Robertson, Will, and Senators Donovan and Winter concerning modifications to the requirements for claiming an income tax credit for the donation of a perpetual conservation easement and in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move on third reading and final passage, House Bill 1233, and ask for your aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a personal interest in this House Bill 1233, so I do request to be recorded as a 17C.
Senator Simpson will be recorded as 17C on House Bill 1233. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, members, I was hoping that we would wait one more day before we voted on this bill, before we had an opportunity to see what its companion bill did in the House. Here, let me just give you a little bit of the background. Senate Bill 33, the one we had talked about earlier that is now in Finance Committee at the House, is waiting in Finance Committee with very limited time left. House Bill 1233 was introduced without that working group knowing about 1233. It also deals with conservation districts, but deals with it in a different way, how we finance them or how we fund them and the tax credits involved. 33 deals with how we fix some of the things that the state did, the Department of Revenue did, the Department of Conservation did, and how we try to make that right with the citizens that it ruined. When those bills then, when 1233 was introduced, and I understand 33 was introduced first day of the session, 1233 was introduced later on. When those two were introduced, we got the two groups to sit back down and have that conversation again. And I can tell you that one side was reluctant and scared of the other side because of the new introduction of 1233 and the secrecy behind it. But they agreed to support both and to make sure that both passed. At least that's what they said. Now I know the sponsors on both these bills have been working incredibly hard and doing everything they can to make that come true. The landowners that were part of the working group are not sure that's actually the case. Not that the legislators aren't doing everything possible, but there are outside groups now trying to stop 33, but still provide the benefits to the land trust community. Now, out of a sign of good faith, I'm still going to vote yes on 1233. But I know my caucus, those people on my side of the aisle, were convinced that the only way they would vote for either of these bills is if both bills passed. And my fear is we lose the rest of my caucus today by not laying this over and waiting to see If Senate Bill 33 is truly going to move forward, or as they predict, 1233 will pass and Senate Bill 33 no longer becomes a motivation. I say that telling my caucus, vote your conscience. If you like 1233 without 33, that would probably be a little bit of a surprise to me. But if you do, vote for it. I'm going to be a yes. I would tell you that I would be a no vote on 1233 if I still didn't have some glimmer of hope that 33 will pass the House. So I'm going to be a yes. I may be that naive, optimistic farm boy from northeastern Colorado, but that's the way I'm going to stick with it. But just so you all know, I wish we could wait one more day before we voted on this to see what actually would happen with 33. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. No caucus positions. That's what our Constitution says. We don't have one on House Bill 1233 or Senate Bill 33. For those watching, listening online, that might have caused some confusion. The bill we're voting on right now is a House bill. It's on its very last vote here in the Senate. That's called third reading, and that's House Bill 1233. And just by coincidence, there's another bill dealing with conservation easements, which is Senate Bill 33, which is nearing the end over in the other chamber. If the General Assembly is able to complete its work and adjourn sine die tomorrow, then in order for any bill to pass tomorrow, third reading, it must pass at least second reading today. The Constitution says that second and third reading must happen on at least separate days. Third reading at least the next legislative day, which would be tomorrow, which I think will be the last day. What the good senator from Sterling indicated earlier was true. House Bill 1233 that we're about to vote on here, this is the very last vote. And Senate Bill 33 is approaching the end of that process. Committee, if I understand correctly, it's coming out of committee. It could do second reading today. And if that happens in the House, it could be on third reading tomorrow. I believe that is why the good senator from Sterling is asking that House Bill 1233 wait until tomorrow. It's not vote trading. It's just that this is such a complicated issue. I will admit, if memory serves, I have voted against bills that the good senator from Sterling has proposed based on having to do with conservation easements. I've voted against those things before. I may have in Senate Finance one day actually even killed such a bill, helped kill. I know how hard and complicated a topic this is, and the relationship between private landowners and government, and in my opinion, a promise that government broke. But I supported Senate Bill 33. Here's my vote count, 33-2 on third reading when it passed out of the Senate and went over the House. 33-2, and I was a yes vote. And here I have House Bill 1233. It's up for second reading, and I plan to be a yes vote. But if this becomes yet another scenario of Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football, if we vote yes on our last opportunity at the negotiating table with the dynamics between these two bills, if we vote yes and pass 1233 today, what could happen over in the House? Not saying they're going to do it, but Lucy could pull the football back and Charlie Brown would end up on his back one more time. That's why I believe the good senator from Sterling is saying, can we wait on this vote for 1233 just to make sure that 33 makes it through second reading over there in the House, and then tomorrow we vote yes or no. We vote on third reading on both bills on the same day. Mr. Majority Leader, I would certainly encourage your consideration of that. Lay over House Bill 1233 until tomorrow, and if that's not possible, could we at least lay it over to later today just to make sure that our good friends over in the House hold up their end of the bargain, the dynamic, complex negotiations between these two bills. Again, not vote trading, but I'm a yes if both of them pass. But if we take our last vote on this one today, Lucy could pull the football away, and those of us who understand these negotiations and finally found a way to agree on conservation easements, if 33 dies in committee or doesn't pass second reading today, it's dead. So, Mr. Majority Leader, again, I would certainly ask your consideration of laying 1233 either over later today or even better tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm the one person that's on both those bills, and I'm working hard to make sure both of them come across the finish line, because it's not a session if I haven't done conservation easements, if I haven't worked to protect conservation easements, and if I haven't worked to solve this problem. I can't guarantee anything the other chamber does, but I can promise you that I've been working very diligently to make sure that both these bills get across the finish line. And what I can give you is my word and promise that we will work to do that, and we work to solve that. I can't control I call it the green room. Can't control the green room. But I can give you my word that, and I think you've all seen me, I don't give up ever on anything. And I am working diligently to make sure both of these get across the finish line, and that includes taking a vote on 1233.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to make it very clear that I am not questioning my good colleague's word. I absolutely, if you remember when 33 passed out of here, I called her a rock star because I thought it was dead over here. I truly understand that she has worked hard. What I'm saying is we lose our leverage. If we pass 1233 today, there's no leverage left over there to say, we need to continue to battle on 33. And that's why I'm asking for this to lay over. But I understand the work that's been done. I can't thank her enough for the work that's been done, and those others involved. I understand we'll be taking a vote. I appreciate that. Rather than laying it over, I would make one last plea to please lay it over so we still have some sort of leverage on 1233 or on Senate Bill 33 in the other chamber. Thank you, Mr. President.
Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ditto. And to the good senator from Adams County, if there was any inference that you were the role of Lucy in the football, no. It's them over there in the House. And am I suggesting that there's something nefarious, that they want to do that? No. It's just that once we take this vote, as the good senator from Sterling indicated, we lose our leverage. If there's anybody over there that wants to mess up these negotiations and have 1233 pass but not 33, we'd be handing them that opportunity. If we don't make this vote right now, then we still have the leverage, one bill over the other, one chamber over the other. If we had to go to conference committee on one or both of the bills, we still could, but not if we take this vote. Then I guess we get down into recall and bringing a bill back to a chamber, but where we're really getting into the weeds. Members, I'm just asking, Mr. Majority Leader, again, just asking again, I think it's in the interest of we in the Senate, the upper chamber, to lay this vote over and just wait to make sure that the House fulfills its side of this two-bill, major, complicated, long-lasting negotiation on conservation easements. Again, I've voted against such things before, and I want to compliment the senator from Adams County and my friend from Sterling. I can vote yes on both of these, and yeah, I intend to, but why would we give up the leverage in this negotiation and find out tomorrow that we're laying on our back out of breath, and the House said, well, we decided not to pass that bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1233. Are there any no votes? Senators Woodward, Lundin, Heisey, Gardner, Liston, Kirkmeyer. With 27 aye votes, 6 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, and 117C, House Bill 1233 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Sprilla. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1250 lay over to the bottom of the third reading of the bill's calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted, and House Bill 1250 will lay over to the end of the third reading calendar. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1321? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Apologies, I probably should have looked to see what bill was next and done this all at once, but I move House Bill 1321 lay over to the bottom of the third reading of the bill's calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted, and House Bill 1321 will lay over to the bottom of the third reading calendar. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1005?
House Bill 1005 by Representative Mullica and Caraveo and Senator Garcia concerning the establishment of the Healthcare Services Reserve Corps Task Force and in connection with making an appropriation.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1005 lay over. Just kidding. I move House Bill 1005 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is passage of House Bill 1005 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Sonnenberg, Lundin, Scott, Woodward, Smallwood, Rankin. The Minority Leader, Heisey, Gardner, Liston, Kirkmeyer. With 23 aye votes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1005 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Janal, Danielson, Hawkes Lewis, Winter, Buckner, Bridges. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1014?
House Bill 1014 by Representative Michael Sanzone and Baisley and Senator Danielson concerning the ability of a person to voluntarily disclose disability information to the Department of Revenue in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1014 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to explain my no vote in committee. Very noble concept here. It comes out of some real life experiences that tell us we need to do better with the folks in our disabled community. However, what this bill proposes is that we voluntarily put a a symbol of some sort on a driver's license that lets the person that you're presenting the driver's license to know that you have a disability of some sort. And by the way, I've heard, I was reading actually about our people parking in the disabled or in the handicap spots and then being chastised for it. Out of that article, I believe the number was 80% of the disabilities are not visible. So don't think that it would be readily apparent, but somebody driving a car, they're pulled over and the officer would immediately know that they're disabled, because that's just not the case. The problem with putting this on the driver's license is the driver's license is a form of ID that is required when you fly, when you cash a check, any place you go where they want a government ID. Going to a military base, they want a government ID. So now you've taken away the voluntary part of it. You're presenting the airline agent with a driver's license that says, I have a disability. Then immediately the question comes up, do we want you on our plane? Are you okay to fly? What is the disability? What's the problem? So you just multiply that by the number of times that you present your driver's license as a form of ID where your disability is not an issue. And what we've done is we have set aside, we have labeled another group of people. And the best way to discriminate against somebody or some group is to allow us to put a label on them. So now we have a group of people that are labeled permanently by their government-issued ID that they are required to present in any number of situations. That's my problem with this bill. I understand we have a problem and we have the ability to fix it. If you want to truly make this voluntary and give it the weight of government behind it, let's come up with a separate card that you would be able to volunteer for. Again, just because you have a disability doesn't mean you have to do it. But if you've had an experience where perhaps you're mute and you're driving, perfectly legal, perfectly safe, you're a better driver than who knows how many people on the road. But when an officer pulls you over, you could hand them this card. It doesn't just have a symbol on there that says, I have a disability of some sort. The card could actually say what the disability is. Then the officer would know how to handle that situation. Multiply that by any number of official times when it might be useful for you to be able to present that card, and make it a government-issued card so that it really does carry the weight of this person had to prove that they do have this disability. It truly is a real thing. And suddenly you have something that's useful. You could present that same card to an airline attendant, perhaps not the person at the ticket counter, but to the airline attendant when they start asking questions and you're not able to respond. Something like that would truly be useful, would truly be voluntary every single time, and not just the first time where you stand up and say, I'm disabled and now I want the whole world to know. For that reason, I'm going to be a no vote on this. I would be happy to be a yes vote on this if we could do it a different way, perhaps the way I described. Thank you.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just need to clarify a few things. First and foremost, what the bill does is provide people with disabilities the option of a marker on their identification or their license plate in order to ease the situation between them and law enforcement should anything like that ever occur. This has been a request of the disability community, by the disability community, from the disability community, for members of the disability community for a long time. It is people who want a way to, I guess, to improve the communication between law enforcement and themselves in any given situation. And it is particularly impacted, or people are impacted who have invisible disabilities. This comes from them. They want this. They've asked for it for years and years. Finally, we have a path forward. This is a request of the community, by the community, for the community. Secondly, it is 100% optional. No one has to participate in the program. If they have the same opinion as my good colleague just described, he has, they don't have to participate in the program at all. Nobody does. It is 100% purely optional. But because it provides people with the service that they have been begging for years and years and years, I agreed to carry the bill, move it forward, and give them the opportunity that they've been asking for a long time to protect themselves the way they see fit. So you may not approve, but for those who want this, this is really important. This is something that could save lives, in their opinion. So for those reasons, although I will not be getting an ID marker, I do not have an invisible disability. I don't have a disability at all. This won't impact me. But for the members of my district and members of the community across the state who have wanted this for a long time, we should let them do what they want, what they see is best for them in these situations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Now, having further discussion, will the clerk please add Senator Cook to the roll call? Not having any further discussion, the motion is the adoption of House Bill 1014. Are there any no votes? Senator Scott, Cook, Lundin, Gardner, Heisey, Woodward, Rankin, Smallwood. With 27 aye votes, 8 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1014 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Janal, Gonzalez, Pedersen, Winter, Zenzinger, Buckner, Story. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1271?
House Bill 1271 by Representative McCluskey and Judah and Senator Gonzalez concerning the establishment of programs offering state assistance to local governments to promote the development of innovative, affordable household strategies in a manner that is compatible with the best local land use practices and in connection with making appropriation.
Senator Gonzalez.
Gracias, Presidente. I move House Bill 1271 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1271. Are there any no votes? Senator Scott, Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Cook, Heisey, Simpson, Lundin, Gardner, Sonneberg, Smallwood, Rankin, Coram, Woodward, Kirkmeyer, Liston. With 21 aye votes, 14 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1271 is passed. Co-sponsors, Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Donovan, Hansen, Moreno, Buckner, Lee, Winter, Bridges, Huckus Lewis, Danielson, Story. Please add the President and Sarah Colker. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1285?
Do you think we can?
House Bill 1285 by Representative Benavides and Herod and Senators Hawkins, Lewis, and Buckner concerning the allocation of general fund money to provide support to creative arts industries in connection with making appropriation.
Senator Buckner.
Mr. President, I move House Bill 1285 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1285 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Lundin, Sonnenberg, Smallwood, Rankin, Quorum, Scott, Kirkmeyer, Liston, Cook, Woodward.
Are you going to request permission?
I'll request permission and I'll explain. It's just tight.
With 24 aye votes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1285 is passed. Co-sponsors.
I'll read it.
Senators Janal, Zenzinger, the Majority Leader, Senators Donovan, Hansen, Kolker, Kirkmeyer, excuse me, not Senator Kirkmeyer, my apologies, Senator Hawkins Lewis.
That's a first. That's a first.
Fields, Bridges, Pedersen, Lee. Please add the president. And Senator Story. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1286?
House Bill 1286 by Representative Kipp and Valdez A. and Senators Priola and Pedersen concerning measures to improve energy efficiency and in connection with requiring owners of large buildings to collect and report on energy use, benchmarking data, and comply with rules regarding performance standards related to energy and greenhouse gas emissions and modifying statutory requirements regarding energy performance contracts.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, unfortunately, I have to request a third reading amendment request.
Request permission.
Request permission to run a third reading amendment.
Would the good senator from Adams County please explain the need for a third reading amendment?
Yes, Mr. President. Members, it's a simple technical amendment. I would have it read at length, but it's only 3 sentences. It makes minor...
You don't need to just request permission.
Okay.
The motion before the body is to allow permission to the good senator from Adams County to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L0232?
L0.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move L032.
To the amendment, Senator.
Yeah, Mr. President, it's a technical amendment to House Bill 1286. In 3 places, it removes 8B and substitutes 8C.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L02. Are there any no votes? With 35 aye votes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Amendment L032 is adopted. To the bill. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move House Bill 1286 on third reading and final passage. This bill has been stakeholdered for months with lots of input, and as far as I know, most everyone is neutral on the legislation. It will give a 10-year process to get our buildings more efficient, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have to rise in opposition to 1286 because the numbers are so cool, they're so big, they're so round. This bill is one of those bills that seeks to solve global climate change. That would be wonderful. And the reality is, if we did 200,000 more bills like this, we could do Colorado's part. The reality is, we keep chasing this chimera. We need to be realistic in the expectations we're putting upon the people of Colorado and the economy of Colorado. Thank you, Mr. President.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1286. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Cook, Smallwood, Rankin, Lundin, Gardner, Liston, Scott, Woodward, Kirkmeyer, Heisey, Simpson, Sonnenberg, Quorum. With 21 ayes, 14 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1286 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Lee, Winter, Hawkins Lewis, Danielson, Buckner, Senator Story, and Mr. Majority Leader. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I voted on the prevailing side, and so did someone else, and they would prefer not to have done that. So having voted on the prevailing side, I move for the reconsideration of House Bill 1251.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, if you consult the Senate rules, it will make very clear to you that upon reconsideration the first time, a simple majority is required. And on the second time, which this is, unanimous consent is required. 100%. To avoid any maybe naive attempt at humor that might have occurred before, there's no correcting. There is no correcting. There's no do-over again if someone just jokingly says no. You can't back up. And that might have happened once, or it might have been serious. If you oppose this motion, you may vote yes, but please, if you don't oppose this motion and you do support it, please don't attempt humor, because it would, under the rules, it would be a lack of unanimous consent and we couldn't do this. So just want to clarify that. This is a second opportunity at reconsideration. It does require unanimous, and even jokingly, if somebody said, no, it's done. Please don't do that unless you truly are a no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if it were anyone other than the senator from Carbondale, it would probably be a problem.
The motion before the body is the immediate reconsideration of House Bill 1251. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted and reconsideration is granted. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1251?
House Bill 1251 by Representative Caraveo and Harrod and Senators Field and Gonzalez concerning the appropriate use of ketamine upon a person in a pre-hospital setting.
Is this your bill? Is this your bill? It's ketamine?
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1251 on third reading, maybe sixth reading at this point, I'm not sure, and final passage, and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1251 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Priola, Gardner, Cook, Simpson, Heisey, Sonnenberg, Smallwood, Woodward, Lundeen, Coram, Kirkmeyer, Scott, Liston, Rankin. With 20 aye votes, 15 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1251 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno,
We'll break for committee. Come back for all the seconds.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Right? Good? And 1321. Yeah, we're going to do those after we come back.
Oh, okay.
But I don't have to do anything about it, right?
Okay, so do you want to introduce these bills?
Yeah.
Introduce them and these.
Let's do that.
All right,
Message from the House.
June 7th, Mr. President, the House has passed on third reading and transmitted to Rider Statutes House Bills 1320, 1327, and HCR 1002, amended as printed in House Journal June 4th.
Message from the Reviser.
June 7th, we herewith transmit without comment as amended House Bills 1320 and 1327, without comment as amended HCR 1002. Bill. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I would have missed that.
Introduction of resolutions.
House concurring resolution 1002 by Representatives Gettner and Kennedy and Senators Lundin and Bridges concerning to the registered, submitting to the registered electors of the state of Colorado an amendment to the Colorado Constitution concerning the extension of the property tax exemption for qualified seniors and disabled veterans to the Gold Star spouses of deceased members of the United States Armed Forces.
State Veterans and Military Affairs. Introduction of bills.
House Bill 1320 by Representative Tipper and Benavides and Senator D. concerning the continuation of the Sex Offender Management Board and in connection with implementing the recommendation of the 2019 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Finance.
Senate Bill 1327 by Representative Ortiz and Van Winkle and Senators Colker and Woodward concerning the authority of a pass-through business entity to elect to pay state income tax at the entity level in connection with making an appropriation.
State Veterans and Military Affairs. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, as you heard, we just introduced a couple of House bills. We'll be sending those to committee now-ish. We also have an Appropriations Committee for bills that came out of committee Friday late afternoon. So we are going to break for the Appropriations Committee, the Finance Committee, and the State Affairs Committee to meet. And then we will come back to the floor, probably to then take those bills up on seconds. There are some of the bills that will be in State Affairs and Finance that will have to go to appropes. So depending on how long it takes staff to get the canaries ready, et cetera, we may come back to do some seconds before breaking again then for appropes. But we will get that second Appropriations Committee done today and all of those bills off of the second reading calendar this afternoon. Yes, so I'll let the chairs make their announcements, but I believe the intention is to have all three committees meet upon adjournment right now, so approximately 15 minutes after we recess, but I'll let the chairs announce that.
Announcements. Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. For members of Senate Appropriations, we will meet at 12:20 in SCR 352. We'll have 4 bills under consideration. House Bills 1325, 1326, 1329, and 1330. See Senate Appropriations in 15 minutes.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee will be meeting in 15 minutes. In 3:57, we'll be hearing 1320 first and then 1266 after.
Senator Gonzalez.
Oh, yeah, you are good.
The Senate will stand in brief recess.
Right. I knew it was going to be. Yeah, once we can. So he didn't say that.
No, I didn't hear what he said. I just heard you.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Gonzalez.
Gracias, Presidente. To the colleagues who serve on the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, we will be having a meeting today starting at 12:30 to discuss the following bills. We will be hearing House Bill 1327 as well as HCR 1002. I will see you all in the old Supreme Court chamber at 12:30 p.m. Thank you.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand in recess until 1 p.m. today.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted, and the Senate will stand in a recess until 1300 today.